Good evening and welcome to the Morrison County Board of Adjustment public hearing for May 27th, 2025. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I have a few items to cover before we get started, so please sign in at the door if you've not already done so. There you will also find a detailed handout of the step-by-step procedure we will follow tonight if you wish to take one. Please put any electronic devices on a silent mode at this time. Also, please note that all testimony is being recorded for the record. Members of the Board of Adjustment are appointed by the County Board of Commissioners with one member from each of the 5 commissioner districts. Land Services staff is here to assist the Board of Adjustments with its duties. The task of the Board of Adjustment is to consider requests for variances and appeals from an order, requirement, or decision made by a county zoning official in accordance with the state law and county ordinance. Each request is considered on its own merit. The burden of proving a practical difficulty rests with the applicant. If a variance is granted, it is granted to the land and not to the landowner. There's a protocol for how we will proceed tonight. For each variance request on the agenda, we will hear a staff report, testimony from the applicants, and then we'll discuss and gather more information as needed. Next, I'll ask if there's anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this request. I'll ask each party to go to the podium, state their name and address for the record, and give their testimony. Please be as factual as possible and direct all statements and questions to me. After all testimony is complete, I will close the public hearing portion of the process. The board will then review and discuss the case in terms of our finding of fact criteria as required by Minnesota statute and county ordinance. We will have a series of votes, discuss whether conditions be made, and have a final motion to approve or deny the request based on those findings. After this final vote on your request, you may leave if you wish. And our first regular agenda item this evening is Cutler Gaddix. Gaddich. There's no property address for this one, but it's an application for a variance to allow for a type 3 septic system on a newly created lot. Oh, yeah, for the record, we visited, everybody was out. You weren't there, were you?
Mr. Chair, I was out there on Sunday afternoon about 2 o'clock, and I walked through it, and I have a few questions.
Perfect. And then Clint and George, myself, and Brent were all there on Friday the 23rd.
Want to have them state their name for the record?
Oh, state your name for the record. I'm sorry.
Okay, this is Cutler Goddich.
Amanda Hoppy.
Thank you. And then we will run on to the staff report.
Okay, Mr. Chair, again, this is a request to develop a parcel that is unable to support a type 1 septic system. The ordinance section for this that applies is 1301.12 and then 1501.4. Here's an aerial photograph of the property. And then here are some photos taken at the site viewing. So a couple of highlights from the application and the staff report. This parcel was created in March of 2024. And the property owner signed a development restriction instead of providing soil information. The applicant has now provided soil boring information and a septic system design that was done back in November of 2023. The soils cannot support a type 1 septic system. Had the soil information been provided during the split process, a variance would have been required to create the lot. The applicant requests a variance to develop the lot with a type 3 septic system. And then here are your criteria questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Amy. Anything to add, change, revise? Did that look good? Sound good?
That looked correct, yeah.
Okay, we'll open this portion of the meeting up to the board members for questions or comments.
Mr. Chair.
Marv.
Okay, so when I was out there Sunday, obviously nobody else was out there, and I walked out in the field, and when I went way to the south there, I'm assuming where that corn stubble was there is where the septic system is planning on being there, is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so then another question I have, as I was closer to the road, about, I don't know, 50 feet away, maybe even further, that there's like two stakes driven together. One of them, I think, had like a blue flag or painted blue. What was that all about, them stakes there?
That was where we were thinking of putting a well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that answers that. And so another question I have, about the soil samples and stuff, you were unaware that that needed to be submitted, or why did this get, for the land split? Do you,
I was just totally unaware.
Yeah, we have had issues with the abstract company who has helped us split this land. The person that I talked to was very confused as to why the land was split like this and why there weren't any soil bearings provided. So we were, quite unaware that we were supposed to provide those when we went to go split the land. His dad had done a lot of the beforehand paperwork, and then we just came, I mean, we've talked about it before, and when we went to go sign everything, we weren't aware that we were supposed to have that.
and as I pulled up there and you look at it and the church directly to the north, the land looks about the same height. You're farming there. Yeah, you make assumptions like, well, that shouldn't be a problem here with the septic. Is that what ended up happening, or I'm just curious?
No, we knew we'd probably need a variance for a type 3 to start with, but we didn't know it needed to be done like before a land split, so it just totally got like miscommunication between buying it from my dad and then the abstract office, so,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
George?
so this question is for Amy. So Amy, would the land split have happened if they'd provided the soil information that it would require a type 3? And then they would just have to apply for a variance for the land split, or how would that work?
Mr. Chair,
Amy?
if you go back to the ordinance requirement, it is all lots created after January 23rd, 1996 must have a minimum of 2 soil treatment and dispersal areas that can support type 1 systems. So when we see a land split, we review every land split, and we ask for either soils, and if there aren't any soils, then they're made aware that a deed restriction needs to be on there. When they're working with a title company, the title company's aware of that, and so they're either sending us the survey and the soils, or they're sending us the survey and the signed deed restriction. So in this case, they sent the signed deed restriction. So then the assumption's made that there is no plan for development. And that's why we allow that, because otherwise, if it was known that there was a plan for development and that there was already a design and there was already soils, we would have required the variance to be considered to even create the lot, because that's what the ordinance calls for.
Thank you, Amy.
Mr. Chair.
Clint?
Okay, so basically what that boils down to is just things are kind of backwards.
If that's what you want to call it, yes.
Well, I mean, basically. Okay. Question for the applicants. Did you guys check into that road approach between the time we seen you Friday and now? Probably not, huh?
No,
Okay.
we did not.
So they must have been working on this a long time if this got split in March of '24 and you had soil borings in November of '23.
Yeah.
Okay. That's basically the only questions I had. One George asked, so that was one of them. So I have no more.
Okay. And Amy, just for clarification, this declaration of restrictions, that doesn't have anything to do with the type 3 part that we're asking for outside of, it's just part of the
So right now, there is a deed restriction on this property that prohibits development. And how you lift that is you either come in with soils showing that you've got type 1, or you'd secure this variance, and then that restriction, there'll be another recorded document that will lift that restriction.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to open this section of the meeting to the public. Anybody in the public wishing to speak to this, please go up to the microphone, state your name, address, and concerns. Any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? Hearing none, we will close this section of the meeting to the public, and we will move on to the finding of fact criteria questions. So question 1, is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? I'll take that one. Typically, when you go through these applications, you will see feedback and guidance from either Soil and Water or the county directly, or somebody that is speaking most of the time very distinctly against it, which we do not have. Plus, you're looking at the goal B1 and the individual objectives, and then the agriculture goal A1, A2. That the application is meeting and is sought out here. So sometimes it's not what is being done, but what people aren't saying. So that one looks to line up very nicely with question 1 there. Anything else? Question 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner, not permitted by land use ordinance? Marvin.
I believe they are. It's something that it sounded like they were unaware of that. They needed to come in and get a variance first to split this property. But if you look across the road, it's developed with a church right next to it. Other small homes right along that nature road all the way through, and where they want to set their house and the septic behind it, it makes a lot of sense. And type 3 systems in that in that area, I think, is almost standard. Yeah, so I believe they're using it in a reasonable manner.
Thank you, Marv. Question 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? George.
Yes, I believe so. The locale consists of residences, church, farmland, which will maintain the essential character of the neighborhood. Yeah, that should take care of it.
Okay. Thank you, George. Question 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Clint.
Yes, I think it really summed it up when we were out there on the site visit on Friday. When you look at that piece of property, it's fairly flat, but it's you look at the soil types that's there as far as there's no I should say wetland. It's fairly flat. There was no vegetation that would tell me that it's because it's in a low area. It's just the soils over time with high water table or whatever didn't give us the quality of dirt that we need to have a type 1. So I think when we look at that, I think the elevation of the piece of property where they want to build is more than adequate as far as elevation goes. If you look at the type of crop that was grown in there and all that, it's dry enough soils to raise corn and things like that. It's just with that water table and the soil types, I think makes this pretty unique to that particular parcel.
Right. Thank you, Clint. Okay, question 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? I think this one is a little pretty straightforward between the abstract company with the soil borings taking place in 23 and then the actual split taking place in 24. Obviously, not everything was communicated the way it was supposed to be, so here we are asking for a variance on the other side of that.
Mr. Chair?
Clint.
I would just add that if you look also that we're going to add some housing in in the county, and if we're gonna do it in that area, if you look at it, all the housing that's around there, it fits in with it. And then also if you look at just the soil type as far as the soil borings, and in my experience, I think some of this, it changes that dirt and the color that we go off of. I'm not an expert in it, but that could have been done from 100 years ago or a year ago. We don't know that, how the groundwater changes, and that's what kind of affects that. So I think it's more than just a landowner or prior landowner. It's just the way it is.
Thank you, Clint. Okay, question 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Marv?
I believe it is, is where they wanted to place the septic, and they did the soil borings, and anyhow, what it came down to it is just where they're looking at the whole picture, and they're coming in the back door with, basically, we're talking about the variance. The variance should have been coming first, but they're going through the proper steps here, and they're looking at everything and thinking about it as a complete setup for years to come.
Thank you, Marv. George or Clint?
I'd just like to add, I don't know if it's particular this one, but I just thought or remembered that when we were out there Friday and looked, there is like 2-3 other spots. So if this would go through and they'd have their, get their variance, and if this type 3 would fail, there is 2 or 3 more additional spots available for that. So I just wanted that on the record.
Thank you, Clint. Okay, any more comments, final questions? We will move it along to the vote. Okay, question 1, is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? John is yes. Marv?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Question 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the Land Use Ordinance? Marv?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
John is yes. Question 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
John is yes. Marv?
Yes.
Question 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Clint?
Yes.
John is yes. Marv?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Question 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? John is yes. Marv?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Question 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Marv?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
John is yes. Of all 6 questions answered to the affirmative, is there a motion to approve the variance as requested?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve this variance.
Okay.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion was made and seconded by Marvin and seconded by George to approve the requested variance. All in favor, say aye. George?
Aye.
Marv?
Aye.
Clint?
Aye.
John is aye. Motion carries to approve the variance as requested. Thank you for your time. I'll work with Amy if you have any questions as you move ahead.
Perfect.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next agenda item for the night is new or old business.
Mr. Chair, I did send out an email, and this is actually really not Board of Adjustment related, but it is in your capacity as a PCBOA member, that we do have that. There is a meeting that MPCA is holding here regarding feedlot rules. So it's a good opportunity to get familiar with what they're looking to do, because depending on what they do, it may drive some changes in our local standards, and then just to get an idea of kind of what's evolving on the state level. So anyway, I encourage you to attend that since it is right here in Little Falls. So I encourage you to attend that. Otherwise, I don't think I've got anything except for a reminder that when you put in your mileage, that it's a little confusing in Paycom because it'll say date and a lot of people put today's date in there, but then there is travel dates, and I need those travel dates. Yeah, on the bottom, it'll say departure and arrival or whatever. Make sure, because sometimes I'll get requests and they're all the same date. And I need to know which viewing it was for, so just make sure you put those arrival and departure dates in there.
Okay.
So that's just a reminder, but otherwise, I don't have anything.
Amy, just one thing on the MPCA meeting, that is at 1 o'clock, and that's in this room, right?
Correct.
Okay.
What day is that, Amy?
The 3rd.
3rd?
Yeah.
I think I'll be here.
And they did provide in that email, there is some information about what they're looking at, kind of why, maybe get familiar with that if you have a chance to review it before. Yeah.
George, did you say you were not gonna be at the viewing, the next viewing?
Yep, I will not be at the next viewing, so I will view on Monday.
Okay.
I will call the landowners.
Did,
Okay. And Sharon's gonna be handling that viewing, so.
Amy, I got one thing. Did anybody else, I don't know if this must have come through you too, that water plan task force meeting and local
Yes.
work group thing? That's the next day then.
Yes. Yep.
One more question. Did anybody go to the solar thing? I missed that week.
The
I did go.
solar. The
for-
informational meeting?
Yes.
I did not. I
Yeah.
did not go. They attended a dirt meeting, and so I was familiar with it, so I didn't go.
I did go, and I think Ed was there too, but I went and just kind of got the lowdown on it. You know, it's gonna be 50 acres, and it's right up along Highway 27, just before Kleiber's farm on the right-hand side. And, you know, they're talking, you know, could last 25 to 40 years. So,
Yeah, at the dirt meeting, I thought that meeting was a little premature. But
they're a year out,
they had already advertised the meeting. I mean, they haven't,
yeah.
this is so early in the process, so,
Yeah, I wouldn't expect we'd see anything on that until winter.
oh, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
On that solar subject, I think you'll find it interesting if you haven't already known this. A few years past, Wally Parkins wanted to develop just to the north of Royal Farms there, put in a huge soil, and it got denied. And anyhow, he got a bunch of property that Minnesota Power supposedly bought from him in Benton County and putting up a huge solar system just to go a little bit south. And
Yeah, they have a Public Utilities Commission-sized installation going in there.
yeah, so on another note, George and I were talking, and I brought this up before, and is this type 3 system, when we get out that direction, I mean, it's almost standard here now, and I think you had said this is kind of mandated by the state that you got to do this, and I mean, you start looking at it just like, well, okay, we got to meet every time for this,
Yeah.
and is there anything we can do about changing ordinance or anything to that?
The hard part is, we have to be as restrictive as state law, we can't be less.
Yeah.
If we had something different, we'd be less restrictive and we'd be in violation of state law. So I did lob over an email to our counterparts at the MPCA and asking, you know, if there is any sort of flexibility, and the answer was no, because it's not about a type 3 system. It's about creating a lot. It's about developing land that cannot support a standard system. When you talk about type 3 septic systems, you know, what we've been looking at are just mounds, you know, where, you know, the whole lift. But type 3 is a whole category of all sorts of alternative designs that can get really crazy and are not warranted systems. And so when a type 3 mound like that gets clumped into that, I think that there's some talk, and there's some counties that have asked the MPCA to look at plucking the type 3 mound out of that, let it be something else, because generally a type 3 mound isn't so wild and crazy. But some of the stuff that's under a type 3 is crazy ridiculous. I mean, as far as the design and what they think will work, it's an experimental system. So, but what they're coming back to is it's not about allowing a type 3 system. It's about allowing the development and the creation of a lot that cannot support a standard, that doesn't have soils that provide any treatment. That's essentially, so they keep, so that's the focus of the state law. It's not about, will we allow a type 3 mound? It's about, will we allow development of property that does not have any treatment capacity in the soils? That's the lens in which they're looking at that through.
Okay, thanks for clarity, bringing clarity to that, so.
Just one more comment, but that's still kind of messed up because that would mean that all the land in the eastern county, if nobody could do anything with it except farm it or hunt deer on it.
And I think,
Realistically.
and in some counties, this is not an issue. And then in other counties, like you go to Mille Lacs County, for example, and almost everything's a mound there. So, it's gonna be, we're gonna encounter it in different pockets of the state, and this is one area where we do see it, and it's just the way it is. Like shoreland regulations, right in statute, the DNR is given that ability to work with counties on flexible rules. But with the septic stuff, we do not have that flexibility. And so unfortunately, yes, because typically if we have the same ask over and over and over, and the Board of Adjustment routinely approves them, what that tells me is I need to change my ordinance. I don't have that ability this time, which is frustrating. So.
See, I know it gets monotonous, but I kind of like it, because if you really look at and understand how them soils or them systems work, it's almost set up a little bit wrong, because, well, right now this gives us the ability, okay, that place was decent ground, okay, to build on, but there's places that could flood, and it don't matter if the soils are good or not, you don't want it there, okay? But so to me, the soil barring, sometimes that's what we have to go by, and that's what the rules are. But there's some property that's gonna pass the soil bore, but they're still gonna flood.
Well,
And that's worse, but we
and one
can't
of
do
the-
nothing about that.
Yeah, and one of the things is, when we talk to people in the development review team meeting, is if you have a site that provides no treatment capacity in the soils, is it capable of development? A basement is probably off the table. So the thing is it's more than just that. It's you've got a marginal site, and unfortunately, that's kind of what's left in a lot of areas, are just very marginal sites, and that's a risk someone's taking just in and of itself to develop a lot that. Is like that, but so that's why in the dirt meeting, we generally are telling those applicants, get a contractor out there. Can this support everything? Can this not only support a type 3 system, because what you're granting is development of the lot. So that's what we've been advising people.
Okay, good there?
Yep.
On to the minutes. Just one thing on the county commissioner's absent line. I'd just take out Jelinski on that. Everything else looked good.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the amended minute.
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman.
Motion was made and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor? George?
Aye.
Marv?
Aye.
Clint?
Aye.
John is aye. Minutes approved.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Aye.
Second it.
Aye.
Second, aye.
Seconded by George. All in favor, say aye again.
Aye.
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 I always like to throw a couple things in there once in a while just to kind of spice it up a little bit.
Meeting adjourned at 6:32.